He was a parade all by himself, a burst of dazzle and jingle. Santa Claus drinking his whiskey straight and groaning with a bellyache. Babe Ruth made the music that his joyous years danced to in a continuous party. What Babe Ruth is comes down one generation, handing it to the next as a national heirloom. Jimmy Cannon.
It is impossible to watch him at bat without experiencing an emotion. I've seen hundreds of ball players at the plate, and none of them managed to convey the message of impending doom to the pitcher that Babe Ruth did, with the cock of his head, the position of his legs, and the little gentle waving of the bat feathered in his two big paws. New York Daily News.
There was only...
I saw it all happen, from beginning to end. But sometimes I still can't believe what I saw. This 19-year-old kid, crude, poorly educated, only slightly brushed by the social veneer we call civilization, gradually transformed into the idol of American youth and the symbol of baseball the world over. A man loved by more people and with an intensity of feeling that perhaps has never been equaled before or since. I saw a man transformed from a human being into something pretty close to a god. If somebody had predicted that back on the Boston Red Sox in 1914, he would have been thrown into a lunatic asylum. Harry Hooper.
He was born George Herman Ruth, Jr. on the Baltimore waterfront on February 6, 1895. The first child of a hot-tempered saloon keeper and his wife, Kate. Of the 7 siblings born after him, only one, a sister, survived infancy, a sad fact for which he believed his parents blamed him. "I think my mother hated me," Ruth once confided to a friend. He learned to walk in the slippery sawdust of his father's saloon and was stealing from local shopkeepers and throwing stones at deliverymen by the age of 5. Nothing his father did could keep the young boy in line.
Rough neighborhood. And his father and mother were busy running the saloon, and he was a rough kid. Totally energetic kid. You couldn't control him, always doing things, as he did all his life. And he was just a heller. I was a bad kid, he said. I stole, he said. I drank whiskey, in the bar, he'd steal it out. Threw rocks at cops.
When he was 7 years old, he was chewing tobacco and refusing to go to school.
He just wouldn't go, that's all. And my father would whip him unmerciful. My mother'd say, "George, if you don't stop that, you're gonna hurt that boy." And he'd keep on whipping him. But it didn't do any good in the long run. We had to put him out St. Mary's. We had to, for him to get an education.
When savage beatings failed to make him change his ways, his parents had him declared incorrigible and sent him off to St. Mary's Industrial School for Boys, a combined reformatory and orphanage, where he stayed off and on until the age of 19. His family rarely came to visit him. "I guess I'm just too big and ugly for anyone to come and see me," he told a fellow inmate. But Brother Matthias, a strapping Irishman in charge of discipline at St. Mary's, became Ruth's surrogate father, and his ease at hitting a baseball inspired the boy to try his own hand. He proved a natural, good at every position. So good, so soon, in fact, that at 8 He was on the 12-year-olds team, on the varsity at 12.
I remember when I was a kid watching an old Irish priest hitting baseballs, and he did it with a shinny stick. And apparently Brother Matthias could just belt these balls. And Ruth said, I became a hitter when I saw Brother Matthias hitting the ball. He wanted to hit it the same way. And so he played ball in the Reform School. At that time, in the early years of the century, baseball just saturated the country. You'd see lists of games played over the weekend. 50, 100, 200 games played by teams, neighborhood teams, every place. Everybody played baseball. So this industrial school had leagues within the school. Then they had a team of sort of all-stars who would play teams outside the school. And Ruth was the star.
Ruth was the best amateur pitcher in the city of Baltimore, an imposing left-hander with an overpowering fastball, and he attracted considerable attention from professional scouts. When he was 19 years old, the owner of the minor league Baltimore Orioles came to see him play and was impressed enough to sign him to a contract. He had only rarely been outside St. Mary's, and everything was new and exciting. When they let him out, a teammate recalled, it was like turning a wild animal out of a cage. He wanted to go every place and see everything and do everything.
Babe Ruth joined us in the middle of 1914, a 19-year-old kid. He was a left-handed pitcher and a good one. He had never been anywhere, didn't know anything about manners or how to behave among people. Just a big, overgrown green pea.
Within months, the Orioles sold their big rookie to the Boston Red Sox, one of the best teams in the American League.
Lord, he ate too much. He'd stop along the road when we were traveling and order half a dozen hot dogs and as many bottles of soda pop. Stuff them in one after another, give a few belches, and then roar, "Okay, boys, let's go."
In 1916, he got his first chance to pitch in the World Series, and he made the most of it. After giving up a run in the first, he drove in the tying run himself, then held the Brooklyn Dodgers scoreless for 11 more innings until his teammates could score the winning run. In the clubhouse, he shouted, "I told you I could handle those National League bums." In the Red Sox greatest years, he was their greatest pitcher, setting a record of 29 2/3 scoreless World Series innings that stood for 43 years.
The interesting thing, among the many, many, many endlessly interesting things about Babe Ruth, certainly the most stunning figure in baseball history, is that he was nearly as great a pitcher as he was a hitter. In his coming up as a raw boy from Baltimore, he mowed down his opponents in the American League. He was the best left-handed pitcher of the 1910s, without question, in the American League, and it was only because of the prodigal strength that resided in his bat that he moved off the mound.
Ruth liked to pitch, but he loved to hit. And he played outfield on the days he wasn't pitching so that he could do it more often. He is said to have modeled his swing after the best power hitter in the game, Shoeless Joe Jackson. In 1919, the same year the Black Sox threw the World Series, Ruth slammed 29 home runs, more than any other player had ever hit in a single season, rounding the bases with what one observer called tiny debutante ankles. The fans loved it.
The way he looked, you didn't think he would have been able to have done it. See, he was the big up here and little legs, but when he swung that bat, he was the prettiest thing that you've ever seen. It was poetry in motion when Babe Ruth swung a bat.
He was such a strange-looking man. I've often thought of those books that kids have that have three different, the pages are divided into three, and you can flip over a page and get different weird animals. And his that round head, which looked like a bartender's head. And then the next strip would be the huge, gigantic athlete's shoulders. And the rest of it came down like a vase. He was so narrow as the legs got down, they got dwindled down to these little tiny ankles and tiny feet. And he almost minced as he ran around.
George was 6'2" and weighed 198 pounds, all of it muscle. Had a slim waist, huge biceps, no self-discipline, and not much education. Not so very different from a lot of other 19-year-olds, except for two things. He could eat more than anyone else, and he could hit a baseball farther.
Off the field, he was bigger, louder, more excitable than his teammates. He used other people's toothbrushes, ran the elevator up and down, and got married to Helen Woodford, a 16-year-old coffee shop waitress he met on his very first day in Boston. Everybody called him Baby, then just the Babe.
Somebody asked me if my club was for sale. What a ridiculous question. Of course it is for sale. So is my hat and my overcoat and my watch. Anyone who wants them can have them at a price. I will dispose of my holdings in the Red Sox at any time for my price. H. Harrison Frazee.
In 1916, a high-living theatrical producer named Harry Frazee bought the Red Sox for $576,000. He liked baseball, but Broadway was his first love. And whenever he needed cash for a new show, he would sell off one of his stars. Babe Ruth's turn came in 1920. Colonel Jacob Ruppert, owner of the New York Yankees, bought him for $125,000, plus the promise of a $300,000 personal loan, with which Frazee could finance still another show. As security for the loan, Frazee put up Fenway Park itself.
Harry Frazee became the owner of the Red Sox, and then before long he sold off all our best players and ruined the team. Sold them all to the Yankees. Ernie Shore, Duffy Lewis, Dutch Leonard, Carl Mays, Babe Ruth. I was disgusted. The Yankee dynasty of the 20s was 3/4 the Red Sox of a few years before. Frazee was short of cash, and he sold the whole team down the river to keep his dirty nose above the water. What a way to end a wonderful ball club. Harry Hooper.
Frazee eventually bought himself a Broadway hit, No No Nanette. But Ruth's sale proved the most short-sighted in baseball history. Ruth hit 54 home runs for New York in 1920, 25 more than he had hit just 1 year earlier. More than all but one team managed to hit that year. And his slugging average, a new statistic that measured the power of a hitter, was .847. In all the years since, no one else has ever come close to matching it.